and welcome to Say Anything with Keena B. I am Keena B. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome back, guys. Nice to see you. So you know what I'm going to say. Go ahead and like, subscribe, and share this podcast. I really want to hear what you have to say, so sound off in the comments, okay? This is a discussion. I'm just bringing you the topic, okay, and sharing a little bit. We're going to talk about code switching and why I stopped translating myself. Of course, I have notes. True story. I was born in Texas, and I spent the better part of my early years of my youth in Missouri, in an area called Baldwin. It's a suburb outside of Missouri, and it is also, or it was at the time, a primarily white space. And I was there probably around mid 80s through the mid 90s. We moved to Florida like around 94, 95. It might have been 95, 96. However, even though I lived in the suburbs, my church was a historically black church while I was living in Missouri. So I spent a lot of my time with a youth group at the church up there, and spend days or weeks going to youth group and things like that with other black children who were just like me, more than likely lived in the suburbs too. And so we had to find our community outside of school, usually within the church. At that time in Missouri, and for both anybody who is not well acquainted with history, Missouri was split in half when it came to the North and the South. Part of it was in the free states, part of it was in slave states back in the day, and it had what they called that Macy-Dixon line that ran straight through it, historically, okay? So as a result of civil rights period, so on and so forth, they had a system at the time where they bused black children who lived in the city, meaning downtown St. Louis, from downtown St. Louis to the suburbs to attend school. I do not know what they do now. I have not researched it. I'm just telling you what they did then. And this was in mid 80s, going to the mid 90s. And my mother at the time was a social worker, and she would spend a lot of time in downtown St. Louis, and so I would go with her on the weekends that she had to work downtown. And that is also how I met other children who look like me. One of the most beautiful black boys I ever met was in downtown St. Louis. I was 12, mind you. 12 years old, mind you. But yeah, what an experience. What was his name? I want to say it was like a Marcus or a Mario, like a dumb Mario or a low Marcus. What stayed with me, I have to say, was the awareness that there were multiple lived experiences that were going on for me and for others during that time. When you're in it, though, it's really hard to see it, right? But as you get older and you look back, you're like, there was a lot of things going on during that time frame. I was caught, what I felt like I was caught between worlds there. At school, some black students used to call me Oreo, specifically students that were bused in from downtown. And then on the flip side of that, white students were kind of just like indifferent, like apathy. It wasn't that they were rude, it's just that they were apathetic about my existence. And the friends that I made, whether black or white, I always felt like it was very shallow is the word. Shallow because there was always like this undercurrent of something else that was there. The spoken, or sometimes spoken, sometimes unspoken thing. Like one of my closest friends during that time happened to be a white girl, but her parents were blatantly racist. That was fun. Anyway, seeing how others saw me caused me to change how I saw myself. When I was a teenager, seeing how others saw me caused me to shift how I saw myself. And I began adjusting based on who I was around. Not because I didn't feel like I knew who I was, but because I wanted to have a connection with others. And so I adjusted language, I adjusted energy, I adjusted opinions. I seriously started adjusting when I moved to Florida, more so than anywhere else. I think that in Missouri, there was a level of insulation from having to code switch because I still had that community that was likened to mine with the black church that was within that same community. So I didn't have to do it so much. When I moved to Florida, when I was 14 going 15, so yeah, I want to say 95, 96. That is when code switching became a way of life. And I found myself doing it more so with people who look like me more than anybody else. There is a specific language that is spoken, a specific way of being that just tends to happen when you're around those who look like yourself. And so in order to feel that connection, you will sometimes will shift. In order to feel that connection, I shifted. I adopted beliefs that I was not aligned with. I adjusted, again, my language, I adjusted my energy. And then somewhere in my early 20s, I began to realize how exhausting it was to constantly have to manage the perception of what others thought about me. However, it just switched from like school to work. Now I was in work spaces, shifting constantly shifting in order to meet the need or meet the gaze of whomever was around me. And it is exhausting to be a chameleon. It is exhausting to be a chameleon. And I had to start really going inner and stop trying to do the perception of the outer in order to be better for myself. And what resulted was I ended up breaking ties, even if it meant that I had to have disagreements with people, even if it meant that I had to stand alone, I decided no more code switching for anyone, for that matter. Whether I was at work or at home or amongst family or amongst friends or in academia, I was done. Now, why do I have this? Why are we having this conversation? I was recently talking with a young lady who is in her mid-20s, and she shared with me how she stopped code switching. And it just made me think about the time I lost code switching all those years, decades. And so I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about how can we make this better for a lot of people who may be doing this right now. Maybe you're code switching a lot and you're finding that it's exhausting. Let me tell you, it is exhausting for a reason. You're not supposed to be doing all that. In my opinion, you're not supposed to be doing all that. You're supposed to be being 100% who you are all the time, how God created you. And then being around those individuals who accept it, the good, the bad, the ugly, the wonderful things about you, and finding those people who are not just well-meaning, but intentionally meaning and accepting you for who you are. And sometimes it's your family and sometimes it's not. You know, you have to kind of adjust, and people adjust with you once they realize, oh, you're serious. She's serious. He's serious. They are serious. And of course, you're going to get those who are like, oh, you've changed. And you have to accept the fact that you might lose some people in the quest to be more of who you are naturally. People get lost. Like, they literally get lost, get lost. They get off on that exit and they get gone. Let's start with, what is code switching? In academic terms, code switching was originally studied in linguistics. The term is widely credited to linguist Einar Haugen. That's Einarhaugen in the 1950s, describing the act of alternating between languages or dialects. Later scholars such as John J. Gumpers expanded the concept to describe conversational shifts within social interactions. Traditionally, it's referred to switching linguistic systems. Today, the term also includes adjusting tone, style, presentation, and behavior depending on environment. It is not new, it is not accidental, it is not a weakness. I bet you didn't expect me to say that, right? That it's not a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's actually a skill, and it's a good skill to have, particularly in dangerous situations, or in situations where savviness is necessary. It is good to be able to code switch when needed, when you have to. It's learned. Anyone can learn to do it. Typically, people are doing it and don't even realize that they're doing it half the time. It's innate. Like, you have to sometimes, like, I know I had to consciously stop. I had to consciously stop doing the things that would be considered code switching. And let me say this. Code switching for me was not what code switching for everybody else is. Or how even traditionally it may be thought of when it comes to a Black person in white spaces. I did not code switch for white people. I code switched for people who look like me, because I was raised in primarily white spaces. So That was my actual natural state, whatever that is. And then I would code switch when I was around people who look like me, who were raised differently. Or in the South, it didn't even matter about the race. It was just the whole culture of the North Florida South is different than anywhere else. So you have to really adjust based on the area and the culture of the area, regardless of the race of the individual. I had a culture shock. I did. And this is from the perspective of visiting every other summer, holidays. It wasn't that I was unaware of the space. It's just that I didn't have to be here 365 days out of the year prior. So, and when I was here, it was isolated to a very specific area around family. So the greater boundaries and the cultural aspects that were expected beyond those small visits did not begin to affect me until I actually moved down here permanently. And then I had to start adjusting. A lot of conversations around code switching focus on fitting into white spaces. But as I mentioned, for me, it was more complicated. Sometimes I was adjusting to relate within Black spaces, trying to feel understood, trying to feel legible, trying to feel accepted. When you grow up between environments, you can start confusing belonging with performing. And as I got older, I realized something very simple. I was who I was. And I began to settle into who that person is. And who I am at a core is a person who's very valued. I'm a family-oriented person. I love all kinds of music. I love all kinds of movies. Now, the older I get, the less there are certain movies that I will even expose myself to, because I do not have the time to make my brain be taxed. I don't have the time for nightmares that I bring on myself. That's ridiculous. So you're less likely to see me watching like unnecessarily scary movies for any particular reason. It's just that I probably won't subject myself to a horror film if I could help it. Although when I was younger, I used to love to watch them. It's like the adrenaline of being scared. Ooh. I digress. So when you stop code switching, you disrupt expectations. People were comfortable with the edited version of you. And when you remove the edits, some people interpret that as attitude, arrogance, or change. But sometimes you did not change. You just stopped translating. My moment of stopping translating was not a rebellion moment. It's just, again, it was clarity for me. In order for me to become a better communicator, I had to stop shielding individuals from the parts of me that were naturally inherent to who I am. I stopped worrying about perfecting the mask and started just working more so on being happy with who I am. And the more comfortable you are with yourself, the less you code switch. That's just all there is to it. The more comfortable you are as an individual, the less that you feel the need to code switch on individuals. You're not reckless. I'm not a reckless person. And I may still be judged. That is a great understanding that I have now, that I did not have in my youth, that judgment is going to come no matter what you do. But at least now, if I'm being judged, I'm being judged for who I truly am and not who I was pretending to be, or not for who I was putting in front of others as the best version of me, or who I thought was the best version of me. And really, they really weren't. It was just what was more palatable for individuals. I find that actually, the more comfortable I am with myself, those who really rock with you, rock with you. You know what I mean? They just really get it, and they embrace what is the newness of you, because they weren't allowed to see that person before, and now they get to see you and all your weirdness. Or maybe you're just boring. Maybe you're a boring person naturally. Maybe you're quirky. Maybe you're highly intellectual. Maybe whatever you are, they are embracing it, loving it, wanting to see more of it. Like, wow, I didn't realize that this was who you were. And then sometimes people are just like, we don't like it. We don't want to see it. We don't like it. And you, so be it, you know. Code switching can be a skill. It can be strategy. It could be protection. It could be a coping mechanism. But at some point, you do have to ask yourself, is this still serving me? Or is it a habit? Does this going back and forth, a chameleon of sorts, actually help you in any way? A question for you. Do you code switch? And if you stop code switching, what made you stop? What made you change? What made you decide that, you know what? I'm done. This is boring. This is tiring. This is exhausting. This is too much. This isn't who I am. What made you decide, you know what, I'm just gonna be really honest about who I am and hope that people rock with it. But at the same time, knowing that even if they don't rock with it, you're fine with it, because this is who you are at the core of you. That's it. That's it. That's all I got for you. I hope that you got something from it. I hope that you got something from it. Like, subscribe, share, sound off in the comments. And I hope you have the most amazing day.